Good day, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the show on this Friday, August 11th, 2023. Thank you for tuning in. Glad to have you guys here. Let's take a look at this chart. This is a chart of the world economy, and each section takes up how much of the world's economy does each country in their area produce. And so you can see the North, Central, and the Americas up here. That's where we'll start. And you can see that they take up a big chunk of the economy. And then we move down. If we move to the right, not counterclockwise, but clockwise around the circle, we can see the next one's the Middle East. And this includes the countries like Saudi Arabia, and yes, they produce a lot, but if this was a money chart, they would have the biggest square, the biggest piece of the pie if it was a money chart. How much money do they have? But how much do they produce? They still produce a lot. They're very industrious. And then we move around the circle a little bit further, and you see CHN, that's China. And you see they produce a tremendous amount of the world's economy. That's listed in the Asia part. And we move around. Africa doesn't produce an awful lot, but they produce some. They're the next wedge. Then Oceania, including Australia, is that little green wedge right there. Then the next one is South America. It's that wedge above them. And let me see, France is in this next one, this next wedge, which is the European wedge. So there's the world. I thought you might be interested in who produces how much into the world's economy. And see, number one and number two are America and China. You know, if I'm going to tell you what, if World War III breaks out, it's not just amongst other things, countries stop trading with one another if they're at war with one another. You know that, don't you? And you know how much goods we receive from China, things like car parts, things that keep things running. The trucks that run across America that bring the food to your grocery store, they need repairs. And almost all the time when they order a part from the parts store, where do you think it comes from? And think what kind of a monkey wrench that could throw into North America if all of the parts deliveries stop from China. All the machinery that needs repairs and the parts needed that they create, right down from every little nut and bolt down to every little spindle that goes on everything within the economy that keeps it running. If it breaks down, they have to order parts. And there's a lag there. How long would it take the United States of America to start making those parts themselves? There's a lag there. You got to set up a factory. You got to hire workers. It's already there in China, but you cut that off, and suddenly everything from shoes, because most of the shoes people in my audience, I bet you 90% of the people in my audience is wearing shoes right now. Probably 90% of them are made in China. Now, I'm not saying they're good quality shoes, but it's what's available. If you buy shoes at places like Walmart, made in China. Now, some people, they get a little bit more money, are able to afford American-made shoes with real leather. And they last a long time. They'll outlast the Chinese-made fake leather shoes by probably 5-6 times over. Anyway, moving on. Enough talk about that. 9 signs that the U.S. consumer is just about ready to break. He's at the breaking point. And the breaking point is going to lead to a lot more homelessness. You know, you're seeing tents pop up in all these cities. Right on the sidewalk. They get no place to go now, and they have to keep the rain from raining on them. And the cold, get out of the cold and the wind. Or they die, the homeless people. So what do? They carry a little backpacking tent with them. They pitch it on the sidewalk. And then the next thing you know, another homeless person comes by and he pitches the tent right next to them. Next thing you know, there's 5, 6 of them there on the sidewalk. And it's popping up in almost every major city. And it's only going to get a heck of a lot worse as the squeeze comes on. And what are they going to do here about this? Well, I'm going to talk about that in a minute. But what are the signs of of the consumer being tapped out? Next thing they'll be homeless, a lot more homeless. It says number one, after adjusting for inflation and taxes, household income in the United States has fallen 9.1% since April 2020. Not very long ago, to fall 9.1% household income. 2, credit card debt has surpassed $1 trillion as struggling American households increasingly turn to credit cards to get by from month to month. 3, the average rate of interest on credit cards is now over 20%, and it's crippling millions of our fellow citizens. 4, credit card delinquency rates are hitting the highest levels we haven't seen in more than a decade. 5, the number of Americans that are making emergency withdrawals from their 401k plans is absolutely surging. 6, over the past year it has become much more expensive to purchase a home. 7, the nationwide average rent-to-income ratio has been over 30% for the last 2 years. 8, it is being reported that vehicle repair costs have gone up by almost 20% in the last year alone. 9, 69% of U.S. consumers that live in urban areas are currently living paycheck to paycheck. Imagine that. 69%, almost 70% of U.S. consumers that live in urban areas are currently living paycheck to paycheck. 80% of the population lives in urban areas. So, oh my gosh, what does that really mean? It means that soon, if they're living paycheck to paycheck, the first time they get sick with, I don't know, COVID or gosh knows what, they're going to be wiped out. They're going to be able to work. They're going to be on the street. There's going to be quite literally millions, and I predicted this on shows I did in the past, that there was going to be homeless cities. So we're seeing the evolution of this right now. The evolution and how it starts is they start to park on their tents on the sidewalks in major cities. And these tent areas grow until almost every inch of sidewalk is taken up with homeless people in the major cities, downtown cores and places like that. Then the next thing you know, the city planners, they say, we can't have this. We're going to have, and it's too big for them to do anything about it. There's too many. There might be 10,000 people living on the streets that way in a major city. They say, well, what are we going to do? We just can't. We're going to have a designated place for them, and this is what they'll do. They'll find an area, maybe a city block or something that's all burnt out or whatever, and they'll tell them, go there, and they'll put a fence around them. And that'll become a city, a homeless city. And there'll be when these major numbers of homeless people start to come on the scene, I mean millions of homeless people, which is coming very soon, there's going to be homeless cities popping up. And they'll name these cities. And they might, some of them around major urban areas, homeless cities could be as many as 100,000 people living, because this is the influx we're going to see of massive amounts of people finding themselves homeless for the first time in their lives. And this is coming, and it's coming very fast. It says the truth is that economic conditions are rough and they are deteriorating a little bit more with each passing day. And this is absolutely true. What were we here? So these are the reasons why we're heading toward this. And we're not talking about something that's going to happen 5, 10 years from now either. There's a deflationary shock event coming, probably in the next 190 to 120 days. Now, I've talked about that the Fed and them will have emergency meetings and they'll fix it. But what it's going to cause is it's going to cause a trigger effect of people that are going to start to fall between the cracks, who right now are finding it very difficult to make it from one month to the next and pay all their bills and stuff. They're one step away from next being homeless. And this is coming, and it's coming fast. And so what are they going to do about all this ultimately? Well, when there's a big enough outcry, when there's enough people homeless that they start to represent their own category of, and they start to have their own lobby, then the government is going to try to turn towards CBDCs as a means to, what they're going to say is, bank the unbankless, or the bankless people that don't have a bank account, people that are homeless. UBI is going to probably run off of CBDC. And you know, there's a lot of resistance to the CBDCs out there. But what does it say here on Kitco? It says CBDC Resistance. In other words, people out there who do not want CBDCs. Hell no, they don't want it. It says it will be futile. Because government will sneak it through. And that's what this article's all about. The government's going to put it in whether you like it or not. And this is because they need to. It's the solution to keep the people they've created a system where you might have a person working out there right now, working a job. Maybe he's, I don't know, maybe he works at a grocery store, okay? When the trouble comes and they get the CBDCs in and they start to pay the people who have a universal basic income, the guy that's working at the grocery store might look at the people who are getting the CBDC and they're getting more than he's getting. Now, on my show, I said everybody would get the CBDC, and I didn't mean that working people were going to get it. I just meant that everybody who is basically got a pulse can get it. I didn't mean that working people would get it. Of course, they're not going to give it to the worker. They're going to give it to the people who don't have a job, don't have an income, and who are starting to starve. That's what they're going to give it to these people, right? And this is their solution. But you know, the guy that's got the job working at the grocery store, he's going to eye up the other guy on the UBI, Universal Basic Income. He's going to say he's making $2,500 a month, and I'm working this part-time job at the grocery store, and I'm only making maybe $1,500 or something, working just whatever hours I can get. I'm going to quit working at the grocery store, and I'm going to get on this because it's going to pay me almost as much as my job, or just as much as my job. Everything's upside down. And you can't run a system, or sustainably run a system, when everything's upside down. So this is heading toward a climax. And I'll tell you what the climax is. When they first initiate this, and they start to give everybody a check in the mail, and they're on the central bank digital currency, which is going to have to be pegged to the dollar, and they just start willy-nilly giving money out there to everybody, yeah, the economy will improve, but so will prices. Prices are going to skyrocket on everything. And they're going to skyrocket so fast that this, not your job or the central bank digital currency are going to keep up. So the dollar is going to start to lose value so fast that the people that are on UBI are going to find in the end it's not even going to pay for their food. And so then the government will raise it. But a week later, it's still not paying for their food. And so they'll have to raise it again even faster. And then the next thing you know, all the people who are working are going to say, hey, these people on UBI are making more than we're making then in the end. After they raise it and raise it and raise it to try to keep people from starving, everybody's going to be starving in the end because this money is going to be tissue paper. It's going to be worthless. It's going to be not even worth the... They're just going to keep adding zeros. And so what's this going to do to savers or people on fixed income and stuff like that? The whole thing is just running backwards. And ultimately, in the end, they're going to have to lower these interest rates. When the economy gets in super trouble, just to try to prop things back up again. It's a mess that can't be fixed. And I don't know what the solution is other than to have the entire system collapse. Ultimately, in the end. And I think that's where we're headed. We're watching, in slow motion, the collapse of an empire. And it's going to get hellishly bad. Now, in Moscow right now, this is a mushroom cloud. Happened in a factory. And I know this is a little bit old news. It happened like 36 hours ago or something. So it's not real old news. It's pretty fresh news. But a factory exploded near Moscow. Now, I don't know what this is all about. Maybe it's just workers at the factory, or maybe it's some sort of something connected to the war. I don't know. But what I can tell you is, when World War III breaks out, you're going to see, it doesn't matter what country you live in. It doesn't matter if you're in the United States, or if you're in China, or you're in Russia, or wherever you're at. You're going to see, when all-scale war comes out, when the gauntlets drop, when they take off the boxing gloves, and it's all out, they infiltrate. Countries will infiltrate under other countries with, like, sleeper cells and stuff like that, and all kinds of hell will break out. And you know what? We are so vulnerable. Our power grid is so vulnerable. Our infrastructure is so vulnerable. Our internet is so vulnerable. We're living in very trying times, folks. But we're going to sit here and we're going to take a look at the markets now. And cheer up. The sun's coming up today. I just thank your blessings, and thank your blessings that we still got air to breathe. Because I like breathing. And we still got amount of food to eat. We still do have food to eat, air to breathe, and the sun still does come up. Because in trying times like this, you never know, tomorrow morning the sun might not even come up. I mean, that's the kind of world we're living in now. You can't... How can you plan your life in a world where there's groundbreaking events happening almost every single day now? Once in 100-year events. Just ask the people in Hawaii right now. If they live through it. Imagine, Hawaii, that's a peaceful, lovely place. And a fire screamed through their whole city. But I mean, it's the same way for all of us. I mean, down the United States, a number of states, all of a sudden they had a storm come in out of nowhere. And all of a sudden they're in the dark for days. I don't even know if they got all of them restored yet to power grid. And that's just something that happens every day now. Sweltering heat. It's so hot out in the Midwest that I've seen many videos now of postal workers and stuff, and UPS drivers and, delivery people passing out from the heat. And they're generally people that do a lot of walking and stuff. They're generally in pretty good shape. The heat's just getting overwhelmingly hot. What if it gets even hotter? It's going to start killing people. Massive amounts of people if it gets hotter. If the temperature, it all has to do with this humidex index along with the heat. And the human body can only take so much. If the humidex is high and the heat goes over, I think it's 107, and it's got high humidity. Now, out there in those states like Arizona and places like that, they get a very, very low, there's almost no humidity. But what about in places where they have high humidity? What if they start to get heat waves where it starts to go up 110 degrees? Thousands of people, especially people that don't have air conditioning, are just going to start dropping. It can do that. It happened a few years ago in Paris, I think. They had a heat wave and killed like 100,000 people or something. A lot of people don't know about that. Anyway, let's move on. We're going to take a look at the markets now. We're looking at silver price at $22.65. It's down 2 cents. Taking a look at gold today. Gold is at $19.14. It's up $2.20 on the day. Now, cryptocurrency. Bitcoin is at 29,365. Ethereum is at 1845. And XRP is at 62.9 cents. Now the Dow Jones Industrial Average today is up 54 points at 35,230. There's no floor under this market right now. Yeah, there is a floor, you know. There is a floor at around 4,000 Dow. Yeah. It would go under 10,000. Yeah, there is a floor, but it's down there. It's so far down there you can't see the floor. So that's what it would do if it purged all the malinvestment out. It must basically flatten this market. It would go back to levels we haven't seen like in 40 years. Numbers we haven't seen. Seriously, if you purged out all the... Well, we've had 40 years of credit expansion. So we'd have 40 years of the market going down to what it should be. Because all that credit expansion's the only thing that's made the markets go up from where it was back here. And like, what was it? Dow Jones 30 through 200 back in 1993. Okay, let's take about this level right here. Back in say 1994, where Dow was hovering around 4,000. Yeah. And all the rest you see is credit expansion. Past that. So it's hyperinflated the Dow, the credit expansion, the 40-year credit expansion. So what do you think would happen if you remove the credit expansion? The Dow's going to go back down to the under 10,000 range. What would that do to the economy out there? Well, I got all these people anyway who just are barely making it. Companies that are barely making it. Everything would just go dead. Freeze up, stop. The system would die. And I'm not exaggerating. So this is when it starts to really drop big. I'm thinking that they're going to put a floor under it. The plunge protection team, they're going to put a floor under it. And I'm thinking that we are in for a drop, but they're going to put a floor under it. I'm at probably 26, 28,000. They won't let it go any further, any lower. But it could move from this 35,000. It could drop like 2,000 a day. And believe me, when the market comes unhinged like that, that's when the Fed sits up and takes notice. They're not going to do anything if they get a 500-point drop. They're going to wait till the next day when it goes back up 500 points. And they're going to say, ooh, good. But they're not going to do much. But they will start doing something if it's dropping like over 1,000 points a day, and it's looked like it's... And that's what it did at the beginning of the COVID crisis. You see this thing right here. This spiked downwards. Right here at the beginning of COVID, it was 29,000, and then it spiked right. Let's see if I can get my thing on this spike down. I mean, it went down to 19,173. It dropped 10,000 points right there. And see what it looks like? It looks like a spike. That's what it looks like. It looks like a spike. And that's why I call it. We're going to in for another one coming. Deflationary spike event. And it's going to make a spike. And it's going to make that same pattern. And what did they do after? They're going to do the same thing all over again. This is a wash, rinse, repeat. It's coming. It's coming very soon. This is when you're going to see gold and silver go unhinged. Is directly after this spike. Wait for it. They're going to lose control over the price of gold and silver once this spike is over and done with, because they're going to have to fix it. They're going to have to put a floor under the market because there's no bottom. Taking a look at crude oil today at 83.53. And it's up 71 cents. And it's heading toward $90. Bonds and rates today, we got climbing yields. 10-year at 4.14, and it's up 6.4 basis points. And the U.S. 30 years at 4.26, and it's up 2.7 basis points. And taking a look at the U.S. dollar index is at 102.78 on the day. Thank you guys for listening to my show. Like and subscribe. And we'll catch you guys in the next episode. And have a great afternoon. Bye-bye, guys.